Namaste everyone, welcome to another session of Indic Studies Toronto. Today the topic of the presentation is Heritage Stories to Tell. This talk is to engage with parents and bring awareness on some books and tools that can help them provide Indic knowledge to children in an interesting and fun way. The speaker today is Kaninika Mishra ji, who is a writer and corporate professional based in Gurgaon, India. She has authored multiple books, the latest being the Indic Quotient and Discover Bharat's Incredible Heritage with Agastya. Kanika ji holds a master's degree from East Carolina University, USA. Namaste, Kanika ji. Please welcome and please continue.
Namaste, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here on this incredible talk show that is being hosted by the Indic Studies Toronto. I'm honored to be here and engage with all the wonderful participants who are here today. So the reason I'm here is because I've published recently a book for children, which is called Discover Bharat's Incredible Heritage with Agastya. And I have previously been involved with several Indic initiatives because of my book, which was the Indic Quotient, published by Bloomsbury and came out in 2020. And during that entire journey of writing that book, I traveled across the length and breadth of the country, talking to a lot of entrepreneurs and people who are associated with heritage products and are into entrepreneurship or setting up businesses around yoga, Ayurveda, heritage textiles, beauty products based on our Ayurvedic science, writing books and comics on Indian Indic stories, etc. And so I speak to you today as a traveler and as a parent, and share whatever insights that I have gathered over this journey for the past couple of years, dwelling deep into the country's heritage, our Hindu civilization, and what I feel would be beneficial for us to carry forward for the next generation. So with that aim, I am going to be talking to you and sharing some of my experiences and suggestions and also insights. So I will start by wanting you all to jog your memory a little bit. And here there are a couple of pictures I'm going to be sharing. And I want you to look at these pictures and think about the first time you heard the story, saw a similar image, or heard something about what the scene is depicting over here. So if you can just jog your memory a little bit and go back in time and think about some of these things that we have heard or seen from an early age. There is another one here on the screen. I'm just going to show you a couple of interesting ones, which I'm sure all of us relate to, right? So this one, from my childhood, I hold this story very dear. And then this one, right? So words cannot really express what we feel when we see these pictures. And if I asked you now to think about where you heard this first, or who told you this story first, like me, many of you may not be able to think and point out to that. And that is because most of these stories are so deeply etched deep down in our psyche. We have been hearing this from such an early age in the form of stories, the narration, multiple times by multiple people. And each time when we've heard it, we've registered a part of that story within us. And so my point is that for us, most of these stories carry a very, very deep-rooted meaning. And that is because these learnings or these insights or most of these various aspects of our culture, our tradition, our history come to us in the form of stories. So if I can move forward and give you this little nugget that I had here about how some of these images are identity, and the caption in my talk was identity, inspiration, and joy. And so the first portion of that, which is the identity part, a lot of times what happens is that what we are and where we are in time and space, as far as our history and geography is concerned, come to us from these stories. So if I ask most people who've heard these stories, they will identify the water in the first image as Yamuna. They will identify the water in the next image as the Indian Ocean, because Hanumanji there is crossing over to Lanka. And you ask any child who's heard these stories, the chances are that they can also identify the place, the geography. While they may not be able to identify in their geography lesson a lot of these physical attributes of the land, they can, through the story, identify, because it's come to them in the format of a story, right? And again, when I go to the next one, here, this story is a lot about the teachings and the values. And again, a lot of us would be able to know, even if it is on a broader level, some aspects of this entire aspect of our culture and that entire aspect of value systems through some part from that story. And of course, who will not remember this one? When I talk about Panchatantra, most people will remember this story. It's a very ancient old story. All kids who hear the story register it as a tale about friendship, where it is also as much about caution as about kindness and the way we live in life, keeping all these different multiple aspects in mind. So the three things that we have today through our stories has been a sense of identity and inspiration to do better, as well as joyful learning through the process of hearing those stories. And I hope that even we, when we talk about stories with our children, we are able to use these elements so that it becomes a wonderful conversation and also very meaningful for them to carry forward. So with that, I would like to once again reiterate that storytelling is at the core of culture. And that is how histories have been passed down, how customs have been changed, and our traditions have been co-created, become endemic to us, become a part of our lives. And that is what has been my endeavor as well, when I've written books, not only for adults, but also for kids now, that it should serve as a kind of a knock at the door for us to understand where we are in history, who we are as people, and also inspire us to do something to carry this forward and to live a dharmic life. And of course, in the process, enjoy the entire story, learn as we go along, but not miss out the fun. Now, Hindus have been telling stories in many different ways. And as you can see here on the screen, I have some pictures which you will relate to once again. And I invite you to add in, if you want, on some of the other formats that we have in our culture. You can see the kawad here, which is the kind of a door opening. And that is something prevalent in Rajasthan, where there is a whole story presented through this very engaging format, which both kids and adults like. Then we have something which is the miniatures, again from Rajasthan, and this is a fun painting. A part of it does get covered in my new book, Discover Bharat Heritage with Agastya, where I talk about the child discovering this format of art. And then we have Kathakali, of course. We have all this Katha Vachaks who narrate stories in different parts of the country. The picture there of that man in white is from Bengal. And then Ram Leela. And so the reason why we have been able to carry forward our legacy, I believe, despite all the different setbacks, is due to this format of storytelling. where we have been able to carry this tradition, the value systems, the culture across multiple generations. Before I move into what we can do as parents and discuss some of the ideas that I want to share about how to, in today's day and age, carry forward our storytelling traditions, I want to say that stories grow with us. And for both young people and older people, it is a changing application that keeps it alive. So if you go back to some of the stories that you've learned as a child, and if I just look at the one which is the Panchtantra story or any other story, for the young one, it's all about fun and joy and interest in the animals, right? And you can relate to it when you tell the story to a young child. But when you are a teenager and you revisit these stories, or if somebody talks about these stories to you, there will be moral lessons and values of life that come through. And for an adult, when we revisit the stories at an older age, for us, a lot of it is about applications for our own mental well-being. And it is, of course, from a philosophical context that we can use these stories to go forward and progress in our conduct and in the way we work within the society. Now, for parents, and now I'm going into that aspect, which is the crux of this talk today, about how do we carry forward some of these traditions. The challenge that is facing us Indic parents today is that there is a lot of attraction and great quality in Western children's literature. And many of you are based in the West, and you would see that there are a lot of children's books which have great quality, attractive illustrations, and also very popular, which kids want to buy. And today, because of a lot of those adaptations coming on screen and a lot of merchandise, the whole consumer aspect around it makes it difficult to wean away kids into another traditional story that we have, right? Also, the limited attention due to the digital media, like I just mentioned, a lot of this comes to children. A lot of these stories come to children from a digital, on a digital format, which is very attractive. Also, I would like to say that the Indic concepts and ideas, also there's an overload of information. So there is a huge amount of YouTube videos which are available. You would find if you want to see, hear about or share a Ganesha story, or you want to share something around Durga Puja, you would have hundreds of videos of all kinds available. And so that kind of information overload is also, I think, a challenge that we face, how to curate and collect and call out information that is relevant, meaningful, and also beneficial for our children. And also probably sometimes the intention behind the video is why we have to vet before we share it. So that's also, I feel, a challenge. Now, I would want to come to the fact that stories are not just words we hear or the movies we see. It is much more. And what we can do with carrying forward some of these stories is not just rely on the written word in books or the movies or videos, but go beyond and look at some things around our home. And this picture I put because this is something very personal to me. Growing up, we always had a Ganesha ji's murti at home. Our Ganesh ji at home was a stone. This one is not the one, but it was a stone murti. And we used to worship that stone murti. It was in the front of the house. And I always remember the broken tusk. And that is because my parents would always point out and tease us, saying, oh, I know somebody's broken the tusk, some kid has broken the tusk. And that was a prelude to us getting interested in why is this tusk broken. A lot of people that have the murti at home, but sometimes we do not have those conversations with our children about some of the things around. And when a parent points out to something in a lovingly and a fun way to get the child interested, where the child would turn around and say, I don't know who broke it. And then the parent has that window of opportunity for storytelling. So I would say to parents, look around yourself and use windows of opportunity for storytelling. It's an amazing way to get children interested into the story when there's something tangible right in front of them in their home, which they lovingly worship, and there's a story around it. Holding a book and reading out is great, but nothing like a real living image, a real murti in front of them, which is an object of interest for the child, and then bring out the story from there. So that is something that I have, I can never forget, because that story was told to me in that fashion. And so I still remember the entire episode and why and how Ganesh ji broke his tusk. And what is the legend behind it? Sometimes we have multiple legends in our culture, right? And that's also a great opportunity for people to talk about it when there is, something like this around which they are so familiar with. Another idea that I have is, and this is because I specialize in this area and I have been working with, in my previous book, the Indic Quotient, around heritage products. And we all have, some things like this, which we buy from when, some of you travel to India, or as Indian, people living in India, we also travel across and we buy some of these products as tourists, right? And that is a great opportunity for us to go back to the traditional aspects. So for example, I don't know if you guys know that Mysore is the place where, which has been around the area of Kishkinda. In the Valmiki Ramayana, Kishkinda was the place where the Vanar, the kings had their kingdom. And even if we look at the description in the Ramayana, that's a place where the jungles were full of sandalwood trees. And the topography and the entire trees and ecosystem there, they are still pretty much aligned to that ancient memory. And so it is no wonder that we have the Mysore sandal soap, so popular for tourists to buy when you arrive in that city, right? And this is a great connection for us to even talk about with our children, or even with the wider family, when if you're going to a particular city, and relate that heritage back in the form of a story, right? The other one that is there is a Pochampalli Ikat Sari, and again, something that is so deep down in our tradition. All the different parts of India have their own weaving tradition. And if we look at our ancient texts, we will find a lot of references to textiles. Ajanta caves has, I'm told, I'm not been there, but I'm told, has a particular sculpture in wearing something which is like a niqab. So that kind of relationship that we have with this land, through tangible products, once again, bring it alive. Those stories bring it alive for our children. And like I just mentioned, going forward a little bit on the journey of moving around and traveling, stories that we see in front of us on our temples or our monuments are stories of ancient accomplishments. And this is something that should be shared. Not just the amazing architecture that we see, but also the history of conquest and violence. I remember that we used to travel a lot. I have visited a lot of places with my parents, gone through a lot of monuments, and all the time when you would see some of these murtis or ancient sculptures damaged, a child's natural inquisitiveness comes forward, and they always want to ask this question. Some children are bold enough to ask it, depending on their age and their background. Some children do not. But it's a great opportunity for parents to talk about the history that we've had, right? There has been a period of time where we have not been discussing a lot of it openly. I still remember my recent visit to Konark, where the historical guide who was with us did bring out some of these aspects more openly than what I remember traveling several decades ago. So I think for us parents, it's a duty to highlight not just the beauty and the amazing accomplishments, but also the reason why some of these things are not there in that original form today. Another aspect, and this is something that is the last but not the least, I would say, is real life family stories. A lot of, again, going back with my own experience, a lot of what I know about my identity coming from a certain small village in Uttar Pradesh is because of stories my father told me about his village life. And that was super fun and entertaining. So do not underestimate your own childhood. Tell your children about where you grew up, the house you lived in, some naughty things you did, some of the things that you learned, the trees that grew there, the fruits that you ate, the streets that you rode around, the fun that you had with your friends, the kind of things that were around that area, that entire ecosystem, the food that your parents used to cook for you, all those things get embedded deep down in people's hearts. And I think children need that connection with their parents and their grandparents, and that can only come through stories. So there are, again, I would say two books that, while one of it is Russian and one is Indian, but I'm putting it out there to reiterate my point and stress that these books, when I was growing up, was the most interesting for me, because if you see the caption there, the title of the book, When Daddy Was a Little Boy, When Mommy Was a Little Girl, nothing catches a child's attention as much as understanding or knowing how their parents were like as kids. And so, both these books are not in the Indic space, I would say, but do help us understand the interest children have in stories of their parents. So do think about this when you next have a bedtime storytelling with your child, whether you should ditch that book and just go for a real life story with your child from your childhood. And of course, do buy a lot of books. I will suggest that you must. There are lots of options available today, and for all kinds of children. In fact, there's too much of that available, so you have to be a little careful when you select the books, whether it's age appropriate, who has written it, what is the intention behind that book, because we do have a little bit of trying to understand that aspect before we give anything to our children these days. I would say look at books which are from our history, from our tradition. You can also look at books nowadays which are about different states of India, the culture, the food they eat, and how things are. And the very, very good books are available. So do look at books. But like I said in my earlier slide, also look at how you can make a difference when you're reading those stories to the child, with anecdotes from your own life, your own childhood. So what are some of the ideas that you have for this summer? Travel to heritage, make a bucket list of traveling to heritage sites that are important to Hindu history. So most of our ancient sites of pilgrimage, our tirtha sthans are important, but you can go beyond that. And some of the heritage sites of our great kingdoms definitely carry a lot of meaning for children. And if you plan around specific aspects of history that you read up before you go, the whole travel is going to become very memorable for the child and very, very important. There are a lot of museums with Hindu artifacts across the world. I'm sure that there are in the Western world as well. Here in India also, we have a lot of museums with great sculptures, murtis from our past, and a great opportunity. A lot of them have been modernized. I last went to the museum in Delhi, and they're really modernized, very well kept, and very friendly for kids. family story time get together. This is something you can add for the summer from my side, because I have seen that when cousins get together, I think when we have as an extended family, as a larger unit get together, a sharing of ideas of our grandparents and their grandparents and their parents become a good time for bonding. And this can be done a little more formally, and in the sense a little more organized than what usually happens. So each person, each adult can be asked to come to prepared with a nugget of family history, which they do not think others know. And that is a very interesting way for parents and adults to share with the next generation aspects of their own history. This is something we did with with kids in our family, where young children were told to put up a show together when we had gathered together for the winter break. And they put up I did give them some pointers that it has to be a story from our Puranas or our epics, and help them out a little bit with the little things that they needed to put together. But they were really imaginative, and it was lots of fun. So storytelling does not need to be restricted to books. When you involve the child, when you involve them, engage them, make them a part of the whole deal, it sticks much more in their minds. And of course, you can buy heritage products. A lot of these heritage products are there in my book. And I sincerely feel that it is something that you can find on the net. I mean, it's not that you need to read the book to get some heritage products. Like I told you, the Mysore sandal soap, a lot of heritage products, our textiles and everything are available today in several websites across the board. And it's when you buy that product and it arrives in a package and there's a history around it, when you unpack it, it's just great for the child to learn. And it's a huge story right there for you to share. And we just, at the end of my 30 minutes of monologue here, and I would love to hear from you now, ending with a snapshot of my book here, which is now available. It is a book for children, where the child discovers various aspects of their culture and tradition, their knowledge system, with little incidents in his life, with his interaction with his family, with his grandparents, with his mother, etc. So it's a great, kind of a step forward into a child's life who is discovering India's heritage, Bharat's incredible heritage. And so you are all welcome to look at it. It's available on Amazon. And that's it from me today. I would now give it out to a question and answer round with whoever wants to ask a question. I think there is something on the chat that I see. Okay, so I have a shloka here, and I think that's a good ending. So when we are imparting vidya, or when you're trying to share knowledge, what is the purpose really? And this shlok is again something I've heard as a child. I memorized it as a child, and I still remember it, which is say vidyam dadati vinyam vinyadyati patratam patratvad dhanmapanoti dhanat dharmam tatah sukham. So what does vidya give? What does knowledge give us? It gives us humility. And what does humility give us? It gives us the ability. For patrata means the ability to earn a living. Patra is a utensil, and we get that ability to earn. What does that ability to earn give? It gives us money, right? What is the purpose of money? The purpose of money or wealth is to do dharma, walk the righteous path. And what does that give us? It gives happiness, sukha. So with this, I will close this presentation and open up for questions. Anyone who has a question here, you can unmute or you can put on the chat. I'd love to hear what you think.
Thank you, Kaninika ji. That was a wonderful presentation. It was eye-opening, and it was a good guidance for all the parents, and to continue with our, Indic tradition and pass it on to the next generation. Now we will open the floor for questions. So if you have any questions, you can either raise your hand or you can put your message in the chat window. We have opened up the chat window. So we have a question from Prasad ji. Prasadji, please go ahead.
Namaste, Kanika ji. Excellent presentation. Very, very useful and, very timely also. So, we had a discussion yesterday in one of other forums about, this new generation of children, really children, like grade 2, grade 3, receiving training or education through schools about all these new life systems, different types of lifestyles, and you should promote it, become very aggressive about it and promote it, and raise flags and become really aggressive to achieve and push your goals. So these are little children, right? So the last Subhashit you had was about Vidya, humility, and so on and so forth. And this is exactly opposite of what our children are being taught today. Very aggressive, don't be moral, push your own self, don't worry about family. And I see a lot of, unfortunately, children are following this social trend of being very aggressive. How do we counter this? These excellent points, go to, heritage sites, read books, tell stories, all that is fantastic. But I think the parents are kind of engrossed in many other things and losing this battle, I feel.
Thank you, Prasadji. I know it's a genuine concern for parents across the world. I feel that today's children, because they are brought up in a more comfortable economic scenario than what we were, our parents could push us towards high income jobs, education that will get you a career, and they could actually use that as an inspiration and motivation for us and say, you know what, you want to live, you want to fly in a plane, you want to go somewhere, travel, you need to study, because you will then get a job, and then you will get a good job, you'll study well, and you can then do that. And that served as a motivation for a lot of us. Today, our children, we can't do the same motivation. They are enjoying a lot of those benefits which have come out of our initiatives in our work. And I think that is where the shloka that I said, for them, that connection, which is a wisdom coming to us from our ancient times, they need to be given that motivation that, if you are dependent on society, you will not be able to help anybody. And kindness is a great virtue, right? Everybody today who is pushing some of these, I would say, political agendas, or pushing towards children to protest or in campuses, etc., is saying this is for good of humanity. This is for benefit or helping others. How will you help others if you are yourself dependent? So first, acquire wisdom, acquire education, play a role in society that will make you self-independent, having some bit of resources that can lead you to help whoever you want to help. But right now is the time for you to acquire that knowledge so that you can become more wise and you can understand how do you use that resource that you gather. So I think that journey, even the dialogues, that the lectures that we give our children, has to adapt a little bit with the times. Telling a child to just earn money so that they can enjoy life does not work, because then they will look at you as a person who is more self-oriented and not really looking at kindness and looking at helping the others or the human beings who are from a different I would say lifestyle. So they will look at it as a narrow-mindedness, while they don't have the wisdom right now to make the distinction of how to help, who to help, why to help, right? So for them, that the transition to help others, that goal has to be there, but it has to follow that journey. That's what we have to encourage our children in some way to understand that it will go over a phase, and you will be able to get all those resources only right now. You focus on acquiring knowledge of the right kind, of something that is going to help you in acquiring more resources and become independent, help, and be able to help others. So that's my little a sense of suggestion. Otherwise, we all are parents and we all struggle. So.
Kaninika ji, there's been some board games in the market recently related to Indic knowledge.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
the
Yes.
children can be introduced to them also, because we didn't have those games while we were growing up compared to now.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. There are various ways in which you can get the information, and you don't need to always, rely on, and like I said in my talk, on props. You can go back to the celebration of a festival or a ritual when you were a child and something funny happened. Believe me, the child will remember what ritual it was, when it happened, where it happened, who played a role, who was involved. Anything that you ask after 2 days also, 10 days also, they will remember. So we need to that, and this is very, traditional old style where our grandparents used to do it. They used to talk about things and tell stories and add some flavors in, so those things are also. But of course, if you have the means by all, have as many books you can on this. In your entire house, you can, have books and resources and tools and these props and toys, whatever you can. It's obviously the more the better, but that connection of the parent is also important.
And I guess we have to reintroduce the tradition we had of storytelling by our adults. That is, I think, probably the most important one.
Yes, yes.
Okay, Kanika ji, looks like we have no more queries, so we will now wind up our session. We are about half an hour, 45 minutes mark. And thank you again for this wonderful
Thank you so
presentation.
much.
We will be editing this video and publishing it on our website, Indic Studies Toronto. And there's a question about how do I buy a book? So I guess it should available in Amazon now.
Yes, I can put the link. So there is, I have the link with me for the US one. If you search for it, you can find it.
Yeah.
It's in US and Canada, both on Amazon. It's just that because it's shipped from India, you will find probably will be some, shipping charges, etc. For it, but it's available. So if you want to buy it, you can go ahead and buy it.
All right. Okay. Thank you, all the viewers who have attended this session, and we look forward you all to attend the next session. And thank you, Kanika.